You know, when we think of the Battle of Britain, our minds immediately go to those incredible images of Spitfires and hurricanes and desperate dogfights over the English countryside. And yeah, that's definitely part of it, but it's really only half the story. The truth is, the battle wasn't just won in the air. It was won on the ground, thanks to a revolutionary information system that became Britain's real secret weapon. So let's dig into how it actually worked. The summer of 1940, it was unbelievably bleak. France had just fallen, the British army had barely escaped from Dunkirk, and Britain was standing completely alone. This quote just nails the feeling at the time. It really felt like all of Europe was in the belly of the beast, and Britain was about to be swallowed whole. And this wasn't some vague, distant threat. It was a very real, very concrete plan. Hitler had given the order: prepare for a full-scale invasion of the British Isles. It was codenamed Operation Sea Lion. This wasn't a possibility. It was already on the calendar. But there was one huge obstacle standing in Germany's way. Before any invasion barges could even think about crossing the English Channel, the Luftwaffe needed total, absolute control of the skies. And that meant they had to smash Britain's very last line of defense, the Royal Air Force. This was a monumental task. The RAF was in a really, really bad state. They were just coming off the brutal fighting in the Battle of France, they'd suffered horrible casualties, they were dangerously short on experienced pilots, and they'd lost a ton of aircraft. They were battered and bruised, and now they were heading into the most important fight in their entire history. So, let's break down the situation here. On paper, it looks pretty bad for the RAF. The Luftwaffe simply had more planes. A clear advantage, right? Well, not exactly. The RAF was defending its home turf. German fighters, on the other hand, were flying at the absolute edge of their fuel range. They had very little time to actually fight over England before they had to turn back. The RAF's problem was different. With fewer planes and pilots, they couldn't just fight harder, they absolutely had to fight smarter. And right here, this is the absolute heart of the matter. The challenge for the RAF wasn't just about courage and skill in a dogfight. It was a massive problem of resource management. They couldn't afford to waste fuel and pilot hours sending fighters up on random patrols, hoping to find the enemy. No, every single plane that took off had to meet the Germans. Every single one. The question was, how?
Well, the answer came from a man who'd been thinking about this exact problem for years, the head of RAF Fighter Command, Air Chief Marshal Sir Hugh Dowding. He was the quiet architect of what would become Britain's true and decisive secret weapon.
Dowding was a total visionary. Years before the war, he saw the potential in a brand new, kind of wacky technology called radar. But he was also practical enough to understand the value of much older systems, like just having people on the ground with binoculars. His real lightbulb moment was realizing that by combining the new with the old, he could create something way more powerful than either one could ever be on its own. So let's get into the nuts and bolts. How did this system actually work? How did Britain manage to turn all these scattered bits of data into a weapon that could win a war? Okay, so component number one was the new kid on the block, radar. Britain's chain home system was basically a string of huge towers all along the coast, and what they could do was detect German planes as they were gathering together for raids over in France. This gave the RAF something absolutely priceless: early warning. But this early radar system had a big blind spot. It was great at seeing across the channel, but once the German planes crossed the English coast, it lost them. It couldn't see inland. And that's where the second component came in, the observer corps. This was a network of thousands of regular civilian volunteers standing in fields with binoculars and simple instruments, visually tracking the height, number, and direction of enemy planes. They filled in the gaps. Look, radar was useful, the observers were useful, but neither of them could win the battle alone. The real genius, the absolute game changer, was Dowding's system for taking these two completely separate streams of information and weaving them together into a single coherent picture of the entire battlefield in real time. And this shows you that flow perfectly. Step 1. The radar towers pick up the raid forming over France. Step 2. As the planes cross the coast, the observer corps takes over, tracking them visually. Step 3, and this is the key. All of this data gets funneled into a central filter room. And finally, step 4. Fighter squadrons are scrambled not just to fly in a general direction, but to a specific point in the sky at a specific time to meet the enemy head-on. The filter room, that was the brain of the whole operation. Just imagine this flood of reports coming in, some confusing, maybe even contradictory. The filter room, as this quote says, acted like a sieve. It filtered out all the noise and produced a single, verified track on a map. This gave the commanders a crystal clear view of the battle without drowning them in information. So, what was the effect of all this on the Germans? Well, the Luftwaffe pilots actually had this dark joke they would tell each other. Every time they flew over England, it seems like no matter where they went, RAF fighters were there to meet them. It felt like they were constantly running into the last 50 Spitfires that Britain supposedly had left.
But of course, the RAF wasn't down to its last 50 fighters, not even close. The Dowding system was just so incredibly efficient. It was a masterclass in putting the fighters they did have in exactly the right place at exactly the right time, every single time. It created this powerful illusion that the RAF was much larger, that it was everywhere at once. It wasn't just a defense system, it was a psychological weapon.
Now, this incredibly effective system was about to face its ultimate test. This would be the climax of the entire battle, and it would lead to a victory that honestly shaped the rest of World War II. That ultimate test came on September 15th, 1940. On that one day, Germany threw everything it had at London. They sent a massive wave of over 1,500 aircraft in an all-out assault designed to finally break the back of the RAF once and for all. But the system held. The RAF met the attack and inflicted devastating losses on the Luftwaffe. The German High Command was absolutely stunned. Just 2 days later, a defeated Hitler postponed Operation Sea Lion indefinitely. He knew a sea invasion was now completely impossible. The battle was won. Britain was safe. So why does this one battle matter so much in the grand scheme of things? Well, winning the Battle of Britain didn't end the war, not by a long shot, but it made winning the war possible. By preventing an invasion, Britain was secured as this unsinkable aircraft carrier right off the coast of Europe. And that set the stage for the D-Day landings 4 years later and the eventual liberation of the entire continent. It really leaves you with a fascinating thought, doesn't it? The Spitfire is the enduring icon of the battle, but you could argue the victory truly belonged to the information system that told that Spitfire where to go. It just makes you wonder, what happens when we have the best tools, but our information is flawed? It's as true today as it was in 1940.